AskReddit by Amber Solace. Have you ever felt you don't know, have forgotten who you really are? That you've spent years just adapting to surroundings to make life easier and don't know what's the real you anymore? If so, how did you overcome this? Might not be the answer you're looking for. It seems that when I'm alone with my thoughts at night, I can't help but come back to who I am, no matter what facade I put on during the day. This keeps me from forgetting for weeks at a time, let alone years, and I think it is actually a healthy habit so that I don't lose touch with myself. If the real me is when I'm alone with my thoughts at night, I'm fucked. Edit. Thank you for my first gold. There's probably no real you that exists across time. That's just a thing you built up when you were younger to give yourself a stable identity and core values. The you now is just as real as the you then. We all adapt our surroundings and change to make our lives easier. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you're unhappy with your life now, you can adapt by changing. You need to believe that, and you probably know it since it seems to be something you're afraid of. But this is the real you now, and you need to focus on the needs of that person, not some idealized phantom from the past. This is exactly what I needed to hear. I immigrated to the States from Europe and got lost. Now my memories of my life in Germany are fading, but I remember being so much happier with my job and hobbies and friends and only crying once or twice a year when something really sad happened, while now I cry once a week. I am thinking about going back. Thanks for sharing this. It's stupid, but I feel better knowing that I am not the only one. I, too, moved to the States from Asia, for a better life they say. I don't remember much, but I remember that I was happy. I have a big community of friends and family. I don't remember having a meal by myself there, I can't even imagine it. Now, if I am lucky, I have dinner with my friends once a week. Not their fault, they are just busy with their own family now. Live alone. It forces you to decide what you like to eat, how you want to eat, how you spend your downtime. It forces you to define who you are. Sometimes that's a fast food eating couch potato, but eventually that gets boring. Then is when you begin experimenting with other things, cooking, going out, asking yourself, what do I want to do? When you learn who you are, you become confident. UHH. What happens if you never get bored of the fast food eating couch potato? I literally just started to notice progress in my life 3 weeks ago, so time will tell if this is a true solution or a temporary one. But I just started to try to care about things. I kept going to church, volunteering, trying to find new hobbies, considering people to date, etc. Eventually I began to realize which kind of things and people I cared about. Within my friend group I started gradually lowering my filter and saying more of what I thought, gauging reactions, and then instead of changing my filter, I shifted who I would spend more time with. It really sounds trivial, and it is, but all you can really do is try to be yourself even if you don't know who that is. If you're like me and don't know, decide who you want to be and start working towards being that person. Also, give that ideal some wiggle room to change as you make progress. I've actually felt like my younger self didn't know who I was. I was shy AF, still am at bars and in terms of dating, but never one to try and be outgoing with friends or start conversations or anything. Now I've danced in front of hundreds of people and announced on a microphone. I check dozens of people in at a hotel a day, so I'm always talking to someone new and do my best to make everyone smile. Just start caring about making yourself laugh instead of making others think you're cool or whatever. Don't be afraid to let out your inner dread wolf, my friend. That's excellent advice, Solace. When one is so lost, so down the rabbit hole, surrounded by a fluid and dangerous environment, things stripped away and reconstructed in response to others, how can one tell what is real at all, let alone what is really you? Sometimes, with the slipstream whipping away out of face and tears, I get a glimpse. More I see how autistic I am, and how effectively adapted. how my mother contoured my life, how I have been loved, and how I have loved. But what is me? I seem to be a space where all this shows up, and I pretend, as does everyone, that some magic eye is actually in control. I did realize it, and it's just life changes you. As you get older, experience new things, get new stresses or responsibility, you kind of lose who you were and become someone new. Certain aspects change, but some things don't. The only part that is a bit, I guess, unsettling or empty is things that brought you so much joy you just find you don't care about anymore. It's harrowing, yes, but I just look forward to learning new things and seeing who I become. Example, I took up fishing. I have crippling OCD and the mere concept of it was off-putting to me, but now I love it. Took me over 30 years to try it, and now it's just part of who I am now. I moved every couple years as a kid. It was always hard to remember who I really was, since it felt like there were a bunch of different versions of me depending on where I was living. It was like I wasn't really just one person, but just a bunch of different versions of me. It's something I still struggle with, but spending more time alone has helped a lot. Also, I don't see myself moving again anytime soon since I'm in college, so I'm taking advantage of this time to really figure out my character. I didn't even realize how little I knew who I was until a friend asked about what my life was like before college, and I couldn't come up with just one answer. Instead of being my full self wherever I went, I adapted to the culture I was immersed in, and then got ready to change again once we moved to the next place. It was hard as a kid, but I was always pretty happy no matter where I was, and now I have time to settle down a little bit. My sis just taught me about a mental exercise to help you figure out what makes you at the core. Imagine that you were born to a different set of parents, in a different location, family, and had different life experiences. What parts of you would still be the same? This is your core self. We all have a core but have to put on layers as we get older and go through life's challenges. For me, I have always been playful, curious as hell, mischievous, persuasive, imaginative, and a dreamer. My parents said that's just how I came out, and when I do things to feed these core parts of me as an adult, that's when I experience real joy in life. I just tell myself, you know, literally everyone else? Yeah, fuck them. Literally? Stop trying to please others and be who you are. Being who I am displeases others. By accepting that we are all a product of our environment, and that's okay. We don't have to be some special individual snowflake who has come to be by some autonomous force. Who we are is ever-changing and largely dependent on context, on the people around us and the society we exist in. Alan Watts talks a little about this in the book. We seldom realize, for example, that our most private thoughts and emotions are not actually our own. For we think in terms of languages and images which we did not invent, but which were given to us by society. Our social environment has this power just because we do not exist apart from a society. Society is our extended mind and body. Yet the very society from which the individual is inseparable is using its whole irresistible force to persuade the individual that he is indeed separate. Society as we now know it is therefore playing a game with self-contradictory rules. When it comes to questions like this, I always Ctrl+F to find another Alan Watts fan. Very seldomly do I find one. It sounds like it would benefit you to speak to someone more qualified than the Reddit hive mind. It can be very beneficial in breaking down where complex feelings like this stem from. Best of luck. It's amazing that almost 35,000 random people came here to partake in, observe, and learn from the community therapy sesh that's happening in this thread. I love the internet. Yes, and I think this is the case with most people, actually. I doubt some people even truly know what their favorite colors are. One way to overcome this, not that I recommend this, is to descend into some kind of personal crisis in which your entire life comes unglued. That forces you to reckon with a stripped down, undisguised, unpretentious version of yourself. It's an ugly process, but it's helpful in the end. Well, I sure do. Yes, I have, more or less as described. I overcame it with about 6 months of meditation, which also had a lot of other benefits. It's hard to explain exactly, really the kind of thing you can only experience firsthand, but I'll try. When you reach the level where you can quiet your inner voice and stop thinking, you won't really stop thinking. You'll just have a strange new kind of intuition, and many personal problems will readily come into focus that otherwise might not. Too time consuming and boring. Can't I just take drugs? I'm kidding. Thank you for the reminder to start meditating again. I get caught up in life and I forget to stop and calm the waters. The key for me was the disconnect from technology while doing things I know I love. And X200B. Video games, while offline or in airplane mode, making music, drawing. That stuff meant so much to me, then I lost myself. And X200B. Once I disconnected, sat down and did that stuff without being distracted or worried about missing out with others, I stopped missing out on myself. To be quite frank, I'm not sure I've ever known who I was. Something always seems to be missing from my programming, some part of the code is blank. I haven't found the correct formula, if you will, to patch it. I have spent my whole life simply adapting to everything that was thrown at me. I won't go into the gory and twisted part of my life, those details may be saved for a later date and a more on-topic question, but my life has never failed to throw gut-wrenching curveballs towards me. I cope with what I have been given, floating around in a seemingly empty shell. As for the reality part, I have no idea what is real or not. This all feels so simulated. Life feels like nothing but a sandbox simulation to me. No matter how many nights I wake up screaming and gasping for air, no matter how much pain I feel, no matter how happy and in love I may be, it all feels like a sickened melange. Chilling, really. We all change, when you think about it. We're all different people all through our lives. And that's okay, that's good, you gotta keep moving. So long as you remember all the people that you used to be. And X200B. 11th Doctor. The person you are when you're alone. When there isn't anyone around. That is the real you. Yeah, I've always known who you really are. The hardest part is accepting it. Acknowledgement of that is how I know who I really am. I like to put in some music I listened to when I was a teen. Something that used to make me feel for who I was and the things I had been through. That brings back a piece of who I am for me. It's good therapy. This is the question in my brain every few months. I've come to accept that who we are changes over time. We can never truly go back because we are informed by the sum of our experiences. The way forward seems to be to figure out what we can do to make the world better in a way that makes us happy, or at least less sad, and then fucking do it. I seem to suck at that last part. Nobody really knows what they are doing. They are just trying to get by doing what they can with what they do know. Up until I was 10 years old, I just felt like an observer in my own body. It took some work, therapy and self-reflection, but eventually I figured out who I really was. Now I write fanfictions over on DeviantArt to build a fan base and eventually sell my books to them. The teachings of Alan Watts will help. Western philosophy that details how we have grown to mimic what is around us. I have been able to shed a lot of nonsense out of my life once I began to realize what ego was and what society does to the soul. An adventure you must take yourself. I had a vision of my father in the clouds telling me I had forgotten who I was and that I needed to take my place in the circle of life, then got some sense knocked into me by an old friend. Were you animated well or a shitty attempt at photorealism? I sometimes get the feeling that I am not me, around me is this ghostish thing that controls me. When this happens, I just move on. Nothing I can do. Also, At a school I hang out with my other weird friends and try not to listen to that girl on that side of the room talk about how she hates my voice, actions, and whatever. Sorry if I was dumped here halfway through the year and was a sheltered idiot, can we just move on please? If this happens, I just try to figure out who is me. Are you okay? I've always found I have problems when I focus on trying to find the real me. The issue is I get stuck in a never-ending chain chasing something that doesn't exist. My advice is to just be. Think of yourself on a boat, sailing the seas and letting the waves take you wherever the current flows. I'd also suggest meditating on the Buddhist idea of anatta, which translates as no self. You are in constant change and have no permanent essence or being. If you cling to the idea that you do have a permanent self, this is when you experience tanha, craving, which then leads to suffering. It's a bit of a hard concept to get your head around, but I found that just bearing this in mind helps me accept who I am. And hopefully it will for you too. Yeah, when I was literally 11 years old, I spent the entirety of first year building a personality again from the ground up. And in the end I realized that impersonating people wasn't going to make my life easier and that I was better off being someone I wanted. It's recently been discovered I'm likely autistic, and one of the signs in girls specifically is that we imitate those around us to appear normal and fit in, and after realizing this I'm determined to never fall into that trap again. I don't have an answer, but dang, this question really resonates with me and I never even considered it before. I can really relate to this question. I've gone through some shit in life and had to go on autopilot with routines and whatnot for years. At the end of it, I questioned my actions and who I was and became. The best advice is to literally submit and stop trying to fight yourself and how you think of yourself. Yeah, you've got yourself into this shit, so if you knew any better it would have happened already. Just submit, then accept that only you can make a choice to change. Then you make a choice to seek help from someone outside of yourself to confide in. Unburden your trapped mindset and let it out and be brave and honest. This needs to be someone you trust. Then finally, make a decision. Now that you've surrendered and accepted yourself for where you've gotten yourself, and you've unburdened your mind of self-deprecating thoughts, make a choice to learn new patterns and habits. Start small and grow them into who you wish to become. Understand that these are monuments you've built in your head for your habits and who you think you are in your head. You need to take the time to unlearn so you can grow. I was homeless for over 6 years. It kinda destroys the person you were when it began. I don't do any of the things that I used to enjoy. I have lived in an apartment for 3 years since then. I wake up every day thinking I will be homeless sometime that day. I have almost nothing in my apartment because I won't know what to do with it when I become homeless again. Allow me to introduce the concept of stories. As people we associate things that happen with a meaning that we assign them. Especially as we get older, this collapsing of two separate things happens almost instantly. So fast that we no longer even see them as separate. Stories are persistent and detract from the authenticity of your life. Lately you have gotten so advanced with your stories that you have generated one from almost nothing, that your everyday adaptations, what happens, equals you having lost a fundamental part of yourself, the meaning you took from it. This story has no universal truth to it, yet it is one you subject yourself to. Only you, however, can choose whether you will empower yourself with new meaning or succumb to the meanings that disempower you. OMG, this is me. So I was born in Nigeria and came to Canada in 2011 when I was 11. I had a beautiful African accent and was made fun of for in middle school, and no one would talk to me because according to them they didn't understand me, so I started changing the way I spoke, and in addition to living here for 7 years I have a new way of speaking. It's more Canadian I guess, but I had a huge identity crisis when I was in high school and at the end of middle school and started admitting to myself that I had become another person. Also, I'm a black woman and grew up being told by my mom that I had to work 10 times harder than white people so get what I wanted, and everyone who wasn't black was out to get me, so I developed a lot of anxiety, Plus with the way black women are represented in the media, I didn't want to look ghetto. I've been taught a lot when it comes to self-esteem, but